planting plan to look at the site distance. So we can certainly take a look at that just to see how it lines up and how we're able to see up and down Pershing.
Yeah, just for your edification, the proposed viburnum rose to 6 to 10 feet in height.
Okay.
That will block the sight line. That's my opinion, and that's why I asked whether you've seen this plan, because I think if you've seen this plan, you would come to a similar conclusion.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure we get a copy of that and take a review and have comments.
Thank you.
One more thing, at least regarding like the height of these plants. We normally list out like what the plant would be, you know, minus any plant care, any maintenance, anything like that. So these plants can all be maintained, at whatever height they need to be to maintain these sight lines. It's just, you know, I'm gonna go with force of habit that we always say this is what it could be, because even the 3 occidentalis between the two would be maintained. That's why it's got a hedge height. But like, I mean, those would, if you left them alone, grow substantially taller than they're gonna be. Even if you look at the occidentalis, we're calling out that we try to maintain it at 4 to 5 feet. Normally they get 10 to 15. So I think the overall plant height can be kept at whatever it needs to be kept at.
Just for clarity, and again, I don't want to belabor the point. Again, Jamie Rabbit, you're proposing to use this plant material as screening material, which requires it to be maintained at a certain height to be effective for screening, and to keep it at that height for screening of the parking lot. I'm still a strong believer in the fact it's going to be in direct conflict with sightlines. So.
Okay.
That hedge of arborvitaes that's on the property line between yours and Jaber is that Jaber's or is that the property? Who owns that?
50-50. About half of it exists on this lot, and the other half kind of crosses over and is on Jaber's lot. So I think the initial intent when it was planted was to be planted on the property line, and it kind of, I mean, it varies within maybe a foot of each other. So some of those trunks are on this lot, some of the trunks are on Jaber's lot.
So Jamie, on that end, I mean, does that buffer work for the, I mean, they're going to have their own buffer, or can they use a neighbor's buffer? How does that?
We can look at that from the regulatory aspect. You know, that's why I think Mr. Parker asked for that property line to be clearly shown on the landscape plan. If they're taking credit for that as their buffer, from a regulatory side, they should be in complete control of that buffer.
Yeah, this is Amy, legal counsel. I'm not sure we can allow that because the neighbor can do whatever they want with, you know, what's on their property. We can't require the neighbor to maintain a buffer for this, you know, for this development.
I mean, I guess my my feedback, you know, preliminary would be is I would get your landscape plan on point. I mean, obviously you guys have been in front of this board before. You know, landscaping is a big deal. I would keep it local, whatever's local. I know the board is typically not a big fan of a row of arborvitaes. You know, Rich probably can speak to it more than I could, but I would just say that, you know, my opinion is the landscaping is going to be a big deal here, and I would put a lot of effort towards that.
Mike, anything further from you on the landscaping?
I was just reviewing requirements for the perimeter.
And this is Jay
Even
Parker.
with, yep.
I just wanted to explain. So the landscape requirements are outlined in the subdivision regulations. And in the zoning ordinance under section 505 for special use permits for marijuana facilities, there's a reference or requirement that the proposed use is sufficiently screened from residential properties. So there is.
Now, is that carrying a separate requirement from G, the landscape general standards and specifications?
No, it's just making it makes a reference that it needs to be sufficiently screened from residential properties in the zoning ordinance. The rest of the requirements are outlined in the subdivision regulations for landscaping.
Okay, well, I mean, there is room to plant a secondary hedgerow on that south property line. We just have to look at it because it is going to be shaded. So whatever goes there is going to have to supplement just based on that requirement. Going down the line, I believe it's about the parking space labeled 14. The whole entire front of that hedge to that point is on the applicant side, and then a few trees pop over onto Jeeber's side, and then maybe a half a dozen trees pop onto the applicant side, and then there's 3 or 4 that are on Jeeber's side. So really, it fluctuates as it goes down that line.
So I guess the goal here would be to have a 10-foot wide vegetative buffer / landscape strip on the property along the south side of the parking area, designed in accordance with the landscape requirements and the subdivision regulations to make it an effective screen for buffer. And again, it's hard to discuss that at this point without the boundary line being shown on the landscaping plan and actually knowing how much distance there is between the parking curb and the boundary line itself.
You have, do you guys also have the existing conditions plan from Dave?
Yes, I can put it up. Give me 1 second.
And again, what that shows is, to your point, Mr. Hunt, that some of that plant material that you're claiming to be your buffer may not be entirely on the subject property. And potentially a question for Mr. Landry or for Amy Goins, that, duplicating another row of buffer material in front of it, you potentially could accomplish it by approaching the abutting property owner, Amy, and getting a landscape easement, rights to maintain plant on someone else's property is another way to possibly solve the problem.
Yeah, this is Amy. That's something they could work out. Absent that, though, I think we'd need something enforceable, something that they would be willing to make a condition of approval. It's always a little dicey when agreements between private parties are made conditions of approval. Unless a land swap is going to work. Yeah, that would potentially work out, subject to review by legal counsel.
That lot 2, I'm sorry, lot 18, that's next to 20, they're zoned exactly the same way. So even if they were to take down the trees between the two, wouldn't they have to replace them if they were on the Everline?
I'm not sure if that was directed at me, but you know, I don't know why
But
those.
just in general, I'm just asking.
Yeah. I don't know if they're under any obligation to maintain them now.
They wouldn't be under an obligation under the landscape requirements?
It depends on when the property was developed.
Yeah, Mike, I think we can sort that out on the legal
Okay.
side. I think what
No
Amy's
worries.
getting to is that, you know, if somebody's not proposing something new on their property and they've owned the property for a long time, they may not be subject to the same landscaping requirements that you've been working through under the development plan review regulations. So we can't count on the neighbor to carry our landscaping responsibilities. It looks to me like there's room between the edges of the parking spaces and the existing landscaping to supplement that in some way and to have everything be on our property. But
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a reasonable ask or condition for the board for the committee to be discussing.
And Mr. Landry,
Oh, yeah.
that abutting property is a residential dwelling, correct?
It's a residential dwelling in the commercial highway zoning district, correct?
So there is no landscaping requirement for a residential property. So they're not required to maintain that screen.
Understood. Okay, do we want to look at other corners or sides of the property? Mike, is there anything else you want to describe on this? I assume the same concerns are applicable with respect to the rear property line and that proposed buffer there.
I think just looking at the plan and looking at the detail, and again, we realize it's an existing site and you're trying to comply with a landscape code as if you're building it from scratch. But there are some regulatory issues that you may need to address either, you know, through waiver request or not. But with regards to internal landscaping, such as landscape islands, again, we don't want to err in dimensioning off with a ruler for those islands, but there are minimum width requirements for any landscape island. There are some intermediate landscape island requirements that are there. I need you to clarify the amount of internal landscaping. There's, I believe, 400 plus or minus square feet of internal landscaping required. So if you can look a little closer at that section, would be appreciated. With regards to
So
any
the island,
spaces, those are supposed to be completely screened from the street. And again, I'm not sure where you're proposing to have your loading space for this facility. But as when changing it from office to retail, that retail requirement does push you towards a loading space. And then by having the loading space, you're required to have that screened. Or again, there's a potential request for a waiver. The last thing I have is looking at your pre and post. I think you have an error in 3P1 and 4P1. Your before and afters are the same. Specifically P1-4, that after does not represent what you're trying to portray.
Mr. Rabbit, we identified that error. I did send, it may not have caught up to you in time for the meeting. But
Okay.
we did substitute that image. It looks like the plan used the same after image in 3 and in 4. And we uploaded to the town site the correct image for 4. So
Thank you.
looked at it, I'm sure, but we have provided that. We'll take another look at it. On the internal parking spaces, interior landscaping, we did do some work on those percentages. And the portion of the tract that we're dealing with here, it has that 5% requirement because the parking lot is between 2,500 and 20,000 square feet. And we have to have 8% of the parking area. The parking area is 8,351 square feet. And the 5% is 417, and we have 672. So we think we meet the interior landscaping standards for that parking lot. But we'll probably be doing better than that with the supplemental planning, additional plannings that are being suggested here.
Mr. Landry, just to Jay Parker, two quick questions that might help the conversation go further on this. In this area, on the south side of the building, is anything proposed in this area? To the east of the 3P1 symbol?
I think there's a dumpster shown on the plan, right? There's a generator and a dumpster, but nothing in that area, in that corner. I see some security lighting and shrubs, but it looks like that whole corner is not used. I assume that's because of accessibility issues, but there's nothing on the proposed plan shown for that area that you're describing there.
But it's currently paved, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it's, let me see if I can get to the photo. This area right here.
That's correct. It's paved. It was just too narrow to have any additional parking or anything like that. So it's going to be where the dumpsters and things to that nature would be.
Well, the dumpsters should be identified on the plan. If the dumpster is going to be there and you have vehicles parked, how will they access the dumpster?
Actually, Jay, the dumpster's on the other side of the
Yes.
of the building.
Oh, on the north side?
Yeah.
So it might, I mean, to prevent people from pulling up and parking here in a different configuration than what's striped, you might want to try to close this off or block this off at somehow. If for some reason, there is a requirement that there's intermediate islands be installed where there's more than 12, where there's 12 spaces or more, I believe. I think you have 10 here. But it might help just to delineate that a little bit better to prevent vehicular access on this side. And I presume that the loading is going to take place in this area where the interior landscaping call out is. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
So the ordinance requires that any loading areas are screened from view from the adjacent public street. And I believe that's a straight shot in when you look at the street view. So it may be difficult to effectively screen that.
Excuse me, I apologize. The top area, that's the area for the other building, the D'Angelo's building. So we were planning on there's not going to be any major loading for this property as it's just a pure retail component. So that other side up on the northern side is more for the D'Angelo's and the dumpster up there. So if there was a specific area that you wanted us to put the loading in, we could put it on the lower portion of it.
Well, how will this property be receiving their goods, their products?
At specific times through the front entrance before opening, because our hours are from 11 to 4 or 7, sorry.
And are a lot of your deliveries just vans, more or less, size
Absolutely,
vehicles?
yeah. Yes, it's smaller vehicles where we would be only be picking up in vans. It's not box trucks or anything like that. And if there's any, questions regarding the taking in of product or anything else, I have Blake Costas on the line, who's head of our operations and also security. Could answer any of those questions.
Well, I think the point is that you're required to have a dedicated loading area that does not conflict with the parking or the circulation in the existing parking lot. So we can't control, hours of deliveries. We can't control that type of stuff. And if there's conflicts that happen, it should have its own dedicated loading area. We've had conversations, similar conversations with other compassion centers that have come before the board. And
Jay, for clarity, that's when it's office now and it's being proposed to go to retail. By the fact it's going to retail, there's a regulatory requirement to provide a loading space.
let me look that up. Unfortunately, I don't have the regs memorized after 2 years being here, but it says the planning board at the time of DPR may require off-street loading areas to be provided for all uses other than residential or agricultural uses, if necessary for safe and efficient access, loading, and/or delivery of goods for efficient traffic circulation or for public safety. A loading space shall have a minimum dimension of not less than 12 feet in width, 60 feet in length, exclusive of driveways, aisles, and other circulation areas, and a height of clearance of not less than 14 feet. At least one off-street loading space shall be provided and maintained on the same lot for every use, having a gross leasable floor area of up to 10,000 square feet. One additional loading space shall be provided for each additional 20,000 square feet or fraction thereof of gross leasable floor area. So yes, there is a requirement.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay. And it has to be landscaped.
It has to be screened from view of the public street or the frontage. Let me go back and look at that too, because that's in the subdivision regs. It's not, it's in a separate location.
I believe it uses the terminology screened. So whether it's vegetative screening or hard fence type screening, there are options.
The subregs say that off-street loading spaces shall be located upon the lot in such a manner so as to be hidden from direct view from adjacent public or private streets. Loading facilities shall not be located in the area between the principal building and the street line, shall be located toward the rear of the building in such a manner as to be effectively screened from adjacent streets. If conditions do not permit such a location, loading spaces may be located on the side of the building, provided that to the maximum extent possible, they are screened from adjacent streets or abutting residential uses or zoning districts.
Okay, thank you.
And in trying to achieve the compliance with, the landscaping requirements are fairly thorough. I would refer you to the figures in the subdivision regulations, specifically figure 6 and figure 8. They provide a good example of what the town is looking for to comply with those regulations. There are some requirements for corner islands and intermediate islands, but again, if you can look at those figures, I think it'll give you a good idea of how they're applied.
Okay, thank you.
I think it would be good too. I know you mentioned delivering in a van or how you deliver product. I think it would be good to show that, have pictures of what vehicle you use. So, the board's not picturing an 18-wheeler backing up. They're picturing a Ford Transit van, maybe some other facilities you have now, talk about when you deliver, how you deliver, all that stuff. I think would be important to let them understand that.
Yes, we can absolutely do that for you guys.
Okay. Well, unless there's anything further on landscaping, and we appreciate your comments and suggestions, I would propose to have John Parr talk about traffic and parking. John Shevlin, rather, at Parr.
That's all right. Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everybody. For the record, my name is John Sheldon from Park Corporation, Senior Vice President at Parr, registered PE, and been doing traffic work for over 33 years or so. So we've been asked to go ahead and do a preliminary investigation into the potential impacts on the traffic conditions of the surrounding roadway network due to this proposed development located at 91 Pershing Ave. As part of the study, we went ahead, we did quite a bit of field reviews just in order to go ahead and get to see the traffic flows and look at the geometrics of some of the sites and the intersections and such. We also collected accident data in the area of Pershing Ave, which was done recently within the last year or so for a road safety audit that we pulled information from. And then we also used traffic count information from the project that was recently done for the reconstruction project for Old Tower Hill Road. All this information was used in regards to our analysis in order to go ahead and determine what the trips were going to be from this site. That's one of the first steps we took a look at after we finished our data collection. We use the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. There's a manual that provides traffic generation information for various land uses that are developed. And this is taken from studies that occur throughout the country in order to go in and look at similar types of uses and come up with averages as far as what those types of uses use to generate traffic. So we used that, and we took a look in regards to two different land use codes for this development. As mentioned, this is a two-story building. The bottom floor is about 1,200 square feet. And we use the land use code for marijuana dispensary. I know that the marijuana dispensary that is done, used for that includes recreational. There's going to be medical marijuana. So we think those numbers may be a little bit higher than what you anticipate for a medical marijuana dispensary. But we kept those conservative and we used those numbers. We also went ahead and used land use code 712 in order to go ahead and get the trip generations for the proposed office component of this building as well. The operations for the site are going to be Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, and I believe 11 to 8 on Saturday and 11 to 4 on Sunday. So we did not take a look in regards to where the traffic generation will be during the morning peak hour, because this will be opening after the morning peak hour occurs. But we did take a look at a weekday afternoon peak hour, and we looked at a Saturday midday peak hour for the development. So based on that, what we found was, as far as the trips using land use codes, were that during the morning peak hour, you anticipate 28 trips for this sized development. So that's 14 trips coming to the site and 14 leaving. Then on a Saturday midday peak, we anticipate, based on ITE, 46 trips, and that's 23 in and 23 out. This comes up to in regards to generating less than, on average, less than one trip every 4 minutes to the site during the weekday afternoon peak hour, and then less than one trip every 2 minutes to the site during the Saturday peak hour. So it's not anticipated to be a big generator and increasing the traffic to the local traffic stream all that much. In addition to looking at that, we also looked at traffic safety, and like I said, we took a look in regards to recent crash data that was pulled together for the road safety audit for Old Tower Hill Road at Pershing Avenue. We found over a 3-year period, there was an average of 3 crashes per year, so there's 9 total in a 3-year period. A lot of those, 3 of those accidents occurred at the intersection itself. The other ones occurred in the area of the intersection, so they're somewhere there, for the most part, from other driveways along this corridor that are close proximity to this intersection. We didn't see any crashes that had any significant injuries on there. Didn't seem like there was, most of them seemed like they were property related. So it was, damage to cars and such. So, but there was a couple of injuries, but it didn't seem as if they were significant for the injuries. Also, as part of our safety analysis, we did take a look in regards to what we felt was going to be the significant movement from the site, and that's taking a look at the site distance that's going to occur as you're coming out of Pershing Avenue. So what we did for that is we took a look in regards to what the speeds were in the area of Pershing Avenue. As you know, it's posted right now for 25 miles per hour. Based on the speed analysis that we did, cars are typically driving around 30 miles per hour, about 5 miles over the speed limit. A lot of that has to do with the type of corridor that it is. Also has a lot to do with the traffic signals that are within proximity on both sides of the intersection with Pershing Ave. So the vehicles didn't seem to be traveling that fast in this area. Based on that, we used AASHTO to determine what the site distances need to be, and for a 30-mile-an-hour design speed, the required stopping site distance is 200 feet for a 30-mile-an-hour design speed, and the intersection site distance, which is taking it from regards to seeing how far you got to look down the road in order to take a left turn out of the site safely, is about 280 feet. Because of the alignment of this roadway, it's a pretty straight tangent, as you all know, on Old Tower Hill Road, and the site distance coming out of Pershing Ave is very good in both directions. Very, very few restrictions or any restrictions in regards to visibility looking down the corridor in either direction. So we felt that based on the site distance of pulling out of here, there'd be no safety issues that need to be concerned with pulling in and out of the site. And as mentioned previously, we will take a look, with a new landscape plan as far as the entrance and exit out of Pershing Avenue driveway as well. We also looked at the parking as far as our analysis. And again, we looked at a few different means as far as determining what the parking needs need to be. So we did take a look at the ITE parking generation. And based on that, assuming in regards to the parking demand that's going to occur at 16 spaces were desired. So we met that as far as the parking layout they provided. And I believe also in regards to looking at the zoning ordinances with 1 space for every 350 square feet, that resulted in 7 spaces. So it did go ahead and meet that as well. So we're in the opinion that the parking is sufficient for this use. And I don't know if it came up before, but there is a potential if there is any overflow parking or employee parking that the abutting property where the D'Angelo's is, they'll have access to that parking lot as well, I believe, as far as having additional parking if it was ever needed. The last thing we looked at in regards to just the overall capacity analysis, the ADT, or the average daily traffic for the peak hour traffic that you have in Old Tower Hill Road, is about 620 vehicles per direction. We're adding a very small number to that traffic flow. And I know this isn't the only access to get in and out of the site, but it seems like it's going to be the most logical that people will be using for the most part. So we don't see any issues, particularly with the traffic lights. I think those are going to provide gaps that are needed, and with the volumes they have, I don't see any access capacity issues as far as getting in and out of the site on Old Tower Hill Road. We have coordinated this, had some initial coordination with DOT, just as far as seeing if there'd be a need for a PAPA, and we've had discussions with them, and they're in concurrence that based on the volumes that this would anticipate, and based on the fact that we're not impacting the site as far as drainage improvements or anything else, they're leaning towards that we're not going to need a PAPA. But we will go ahead and they asked us just go ahead and document that and get that into a letter. So we will be providing that to them and get a final reading for them on that. So, that's a summary, based on what we've done for the study. We've concluded, the projected traffic is anticipated to have no significant impacts to the traffic capacity on the sites. The speeds that we see and the site distances, we feel that, it's going to be safe access in and out of the site. And then look at the parking. We feel that the parking is sufficient in order to go and handle the potential customer visits and employee visits to the site. So all in all, we don't see the site going ahead and having any major significant impacts to the surrounding roadway network. And that's a quick summary, but I'm open for any questions.
Jamie, this is Brian Wagner. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, mainly relating to Pershing Avenue south of the site. First of all, I know that it's an uphill rise from Old Tower Hill Road down Pershing Avenue to the south. I want to know if that impacts sight lines exiting the property, because you won't see cars until they come over the rise on Pershing Avenue. And my second question is whether you evaluated traffic volumes coming into the site down Pershing Avenue from MacArthur Avenue to the south by the post office. As a Narragansett resident who makes frequent trips to Bagels and AutoZone right there across the street, I know that when I come in from the south, I turn at the light at the post office and come down Pershing Avenue to avoid the 3 additional lights on Kingstown Road and Old Tower Hill Road. So I think you're going to have a lot of people like me who access Wakefield from the Narragansett area using that cut through the residential neighborhood. And I wonder if you looked at traffic volume increases that way.
Yeah, we did take that into consideration as far as how it's going to occur, and we would anticipate from this site that the distribution is going to be throughout. So it's going to be coming, westbound on Old Tower Hill Road. It's going to be coming, from the north, coming down Kingstown Road, and you're right, coming up from Narragansett, coming up Kingstown Road, MacArthur, and also coming from Wakefield. So it's going to be distributed. I think the big thing is with the overall volumes that we anticipate come to the site, and with that distribution, it's going to be a relatively small number. If it does come, that it's not going to have any significant impact to the capacity of the roadways or affecting any of the turning movements or anything else. So we don't see the volumes with the distribution being a major impact coming that way. But you're right in regards to the fact that they will be taking all different types of routes, and that would be one alternative as far as coming up Kingston, then going out to MacArthur, and then coming up Pershing. But again, I think would probably be, I would think, a smaller amount or a smaller percentage based on the overall traffic volumes coming that way. I would anticipate more coming from either Route 1 or coming down 108 towards the intersection. So, but I think it's overall it's good. I think it's gonna be a small number. And then Pershing, you asked about in regards to the sight lines, and there is a rise further down the road, but it's certainly outside the length as far as the safe sight distance on that roadway. And it's, even if we use a design speed of 30, I think it's going to meet that. But I think is because you're approaching the intersections, the speeds are even slower than 30 for the sight lines. But I think there is a rise, but we exceed the requirements for the stopping sight distance. So,
okay, thank you.
I hope that answers
Can
your question.
I'd like to ask a question as well, regarding Pershing, but well, and also, what did you look at the level of service coming out of Pershing onto Old Tower Hill Road at all, and any changes pre and post?
We did not do any analysis as far as traffic capacity analysis, and mainly just going back to with the volumes that we anticipate with 14 cars coming in and 14 leaving during the afternoon peak hour. You just know that's not going to decrease it, for the overall level of service, because it's such a small volume. We certainly can go ahead and run that analysis and show just what the delays are. So just to confirm in regards to what impact it's going to have. But I said with the volumes being so small, I wouldn't anticipate that having any decrease in level of service.
Well, but along the lines of your expected volumes, we've had other applications, of the same type of use, and if I remember right, I thought we had different volumes on some of those, and they were actually higher. And I'd actually like to look at some of those to understand. And I want to know at some point why these would be lower, if they are in fact lower. I believe they are. I thought there was another one nearby that was in and around 90 vehicles during the peak hour, and this one's half that. So I
probably not knowing where those came, but probably it's based on the square footage of the building. So I'm not sure what the square footage was of the previous submittals. So that it may have been, this is 1,200 feet as far as the marijuana dispensary area, and then the office space. I'm not sure what the size of those buildings were, but it's based on the square footage. So that may.
Well, because this is a sort of a regional use, and that the use is your expected coverage is going to be, if this were approved at the state level, it would be the South County area, I'm assuming. It's not that type of I don't believe it's that type of analysis. I think it's more of, the coverage area. If you were the only supermarket in all of South County, then you would get all of the supermarkets together, regardless of what your square footage is, you're going to get everybody. So it just seems a little different than just a straight, IT analysis of square footage and whatnot. But
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, you're right. From what I understand, there are other sites in the state right now. There's 3, and I guess they're looking to put 9. And I think when you look at the overall distribution, I think it's going to be somewhere around there. And I think based on the analysis and the parking analysis and the traffic analysis, I think there's, is this number exact? It's a projection just based on typical, types of uses, and with the medical marijuana component, the volumes, with the cars, getting the cars, everything else, I think the volumes could be maybe even less, or they could be more. But I understand what you're saying. But these are just based on the information that you have, and based on other uses, which I think are kind of regional areas, and other uses. But
just that's the type of thing that's going to trip it up, I think. And also because you're coming up on, and I echo Brian's concern. When I go to Bagels or something like that, I'm always going down. I go down Pershing. It's just a lot easier from the Narragansett end, all points south, and D'Angelo's as well. It just adds to that impact on that neighborhood. And we saw it with it's similar, not the same neighborhood, same neighborhood, but with Brewed Awakenings, which was only going to exit onto that neighborhood, and we could see. There was a very, very vocal group of people over there that do not want additional traffic going through their neighborhood. And I think this is going to impact that. It's going to increase that traffic. So
I would say a couple of things I just wanted to mention. Pre-COVID, at between 11 and 1, Pershing Ave is a one-way street because all the construction workers park on one side and go to D'Angelo's to get lunch. So that is a huge thing. That's an issue. Also, the medical marijuana facility in Warwick is across the street from Supply New England, where I'm there often. That is, they should have a police officer there. It's so busy. So I'm not sure what you're basing those counts a day on, but I would assume if you went and looked at the Providence facility and the Warwick facility, the numbers would be way higher than what you're anticipating. And I think what Rich mentioned is this is going to be the only one in South County. It's going to get pretty big.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add from practical experience, exiting Pershing Avenue onto Old Tower Hill Road there, turning right, going east is not a problem. Turning left and going west is very difficult to find an opening between cars coming up from your left from the intersection with 108, and the speed of traffic coming down the hill from the east. It's a very tough place to get out of going west there.
we can further do an analysis for that, just to show what the existing level of service is and what differences would make with those. So we can take a look at that.
Okay. Would you like either Mr. Herbst or his associate to provide information to you concerning security and those types of issues, or is that more of a zoning issue?
On the board end, my assumption is DBR handles most of that security stuff. So,
Correct.
the things that I see that go in front of the board here, landscaping, lighting, and coming and going. So, I mean, I think the security end should be good. I think we're not going to be your biggest hurdle there, right?
I think, this is Jay. I think you also should consider showing any proposed lighting improvements on the plan. Obviously being a proposed retail shop, and the plans are fairly plug and play where there's not a whole lot proposed to be changed. You can't tell from the plans what types of lighting is going to be provided. And it's clear in the ordinance that lighting is important, that the building and the parking areas and the accessory uses need to be sufficiently lit. And I don't recall seeing much of that information in the application, although I could be remiss. We've been pretty busy lately.
We've added to the proposed plan lighting in the parking lot and on the building itself. I think we have a note on that. Note 14 on the plan shows what kind of lighting that is. It's got the specification, the wattage, and the lumens. You know, we can try to make that a little more robust, but we did pay a lot of attention to that because that's an issue the applicant's very familiar with based on its other operations.
We had questions from other similar sites wanting to differentiate between work hours lighting when the establishment is open and serving customers, and after hours security lighting as well. So you may want to distinguish those two things.
Okay, thank you.
A spec on the lighting or a sheet on those wall packs might be also helpful to give an idea of what they're going to look like.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have two wall packs on the building and one light in the parking lot?
Correct. Actually, it looks like there are two lights in the parking lot. One in the near the entrance to the street and one on the south side.
Correct, one here and one here.
Right, well, we thank you for your input. If there's anything else we can help you with the resources we have on the line, we're happy to do that.
Yep, Bill, sorry, I realized I was muted. To Jay's point, with your wall packs and with your proposed poles, not just the specifications for those with regards to lumens, but what their cone of illumination is, so that we're, if there's shoebox design, we're not casting light off site. Specifically with that, be the southeasterly proposed light pole, that pole is not shining light onto the residential property, which would be in conflict with the intent of the zoning regulations.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make sure with regards to traffic, I know John spoke, Rich spoke. I had a couple. Rich, if you don't have any additional questions, or John doesn't have any additional questions, I have a few with regards to the internal circulation.
Yes.
Are you all set? And John, Shock?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say is all these that we've looked at, a lot of it's all theoretical. And even though in the traffic study, it talks about assumptions and estimated. And I think with the other ones of our projects, if I remember correctly, we had a condition that the applicant or the owner revisit traffic if traffic becomes an issue once the facility, if it gets all the approvals, it opens. I always think traffic is the issue. And I'm not entirely convinced that the traffic studies reflect what's actually going to happen out there. So is my concern's the same as this one as it has been for all these other applications that we've looked at.
John, we have spoken in regards to, I know some of the things that we've seen, and obviously it's not real desirable, but if traffic and parking became an issue, I think there's been some discussions that, there is other alternatives as far as potentially appointments. And I think that's in the report in regards to doing things by appointment if that's what it came to. But, based on the analysis and what we have right now, it doesn't seem, based on the projections that we know and what we have, that the volumes could be that hurt, but it's something that would be considered and looked at.
Yeah, I just think we need another bite at the apple if traffic becomes an issue. And I don't know how we do that as part of the condition of approval. Maybe we make the owner have appointments. I don't know if that is something we can do. Probably more of a question for Amy, but I think we have to be able to revisit this if it becomes gridlock out there.
This is Amy. I don't think we can control the manner of their business as far as, must accept customers only by appointment. I think that probably exceeds our authority, but we obviously can require them to mitigate traffic impacts. I think that could be something, I would call it a condition of zoning board approval, right? Because the DPR is advisory to the zoning board's review of this use permit application, and that's one of the standards they have to meet there. So I would suggest when this goes to planning, if it is approved on an advisory basis, that we recommend zoning put a condition on the approval with regard to traffic impacts and mitigation.
I think our previous issues about reevaluating traffic were driven by two concerns. One was whether or not the traffic counts were taken during COVID, when we have an abnormally low amount of traffic circulation. So you may not have accurate counts. And I think the other concern was what happens if we all of a sudden wind up with general recreational marijuana approval, which could wind up in a considerable increase in traffic volume to a site like this. And that's where we were looking to try and get some reevaluation.
Yeah, this, in no event would any approval issued by the town carry over if this facility were to change from medical to recreational.
Along the similar, sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, Amy, and this may be a question for you or Mr. Landry, and even Mr. Shevlin, with regards to the traffic, to John Schock's point, if you're making an assumption that your peak hour is 46, and I'm just going to say for discussion purposes, it turns to 100. Would a board have the ability to require an additional traffic measure if the ADT exceeds something? So instead of that second bite of the apple, if the peak hour goes to X, then they're required to do traffic control with regards to an officer. Again, I understand you can't condition a second bite at the apple. Even if you did, what do you do? Pull back a permit?
Right, I don't know who would monitor that, so I don't know how you would enforce a condition like that. I think the condition needs to take into account current impacts and expected future impacts. And we have to capture that as best we can without creating a situation that leads to a difficult enforcement issue for the town.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Just moving from a traffic standpoint to the parking lot, Mr. Shevlin has a peak hour on a Saturday of 46. 23 in, 23 out. So you have 46 plus turning movements in that hour. You have one way in, one way out. I want to say it's a constrained entrance to a secondary constrained entrance. And if you pull in and realize there are no parking spaces, there is no ability for a turnaround within that parking lot without performing, in essence, a 3-point turn within a parking aisle. The other aspect of that is under ADA, you're required to have a van space if you're only providing, your requirements are one, that one has to be a van space, which requires the cross hatching and aisle width associated with that van space, which may force the elimination of one of your other parking spaces. But I think you need to just take a look at that. And also, John, if Mr. Shevlin, if you have the ability to address turning movement in that peak hour without that parking lot becoming gridlock, pushing, the intersection back on the town road.
Yeah, we could take a look at that. I know, there's been other studies have been done as far as up in Massachusetts, just as far as the amount of time that customers usually spend at the site, and usually within the store. From what the studies have found, that usually in the retail store, they're in there for 5 to 10 minutes,
Yep.
and then 5 minutes in the parking lot. So it's like 15 minutes per customer. So with the volumes that we have and the turnover that they have, you shouldn't have that much need for parking. Like I said, with the volumes that, based on ITE, that are coming to the site, we're talking about having one car come every 4 minutes or so, during the weekday. So we can go ahead and further analyze that and break down more. But we try to explain in regards to our report, just in regards to how the customers, when they come, and the turnover effect that they have, and based on the parking and the trips that we have, how that we feel comfortable in regards to what's going to be there for the parking. So, that was another thing that we, have talked to the developer about in regards to, he is also in our discussions in regards to the parking and such. If it is, at capacity or whatever, he has committed to having some staff go ahead and help with directing traffic, to and from the site, in and out of the site, and whether, if it's full, and bringing them over to any additional spaces that may have at the adjacent lots and such, if that need came about. But we'll work more with the applicant in regards to that and getting that buttoned up.
This is Jay. Along the lines with the unknowns, I believe there's an assertion that the remainder of the site would be able to accommodate overflow parking if necessary. Am I correct in stating that?
Yes, we have an affirmation from the owner to that effect in the package.
So that kind of leads to the logical question of, right now we're looking at the primary parking area and the landscape screening for that. If this does become more used more intensively than initially identified, I think we should be cognizant of the screening that would come along with that as well. I'm not saying it's a given right now, but I do think it's an unknown that we need to consider. It would be short-sighted of us to consider overflow parking on the remainder of the site, and then that not meet the landscape requirements and screening if it is in fact providing parking for the retail facility. But again, that's difficult to quantify. That's difficult to comprehend when we don't really know if the demand is going to exceed what's currently there. So that might be something to be considered for a condition, just to cover all the bases, to make sure we're not being short-sighted.
One thing in that regard, Jay, the logical overflow spaces are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, looks like 7 spaces parallel to Pershing Avenue, just to the left of the entrance to our site. Those are not counted in our 20 spaces, but those are the ones we would, we're really kind of focusing on for overflow parking. And so that way we we can take a look at the, just in case, we can take a look at the landscaping requirements associated with, with that area. I mean, it's a fair point.
But Mr. Landry, to Jay's point, if the existing commercial building has a regulatory requirement to include them in their parking analysis.
Hey, we ran those figures. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Rabbit. I that's a good point, but we ran those calculations just to make sure that they had more than enough parking. They have 2,700, I believe. I'm sorry, 2,200 square feet of retail there. They've got they've got 7,200 square feet of retail and fast food, 3,600 retail, which is the convenience store, and 3,600 fast food, which is the D'Angelo's and the pizza place. Well, I guess the retail is the nail salon and the convenience store, and the rest is the D'Angelo's and the Pizza Hut. And those are 11 spaces apiece based on one for every 350 square feet. So they require 22 spaces for what's going on Old Tower Hill, 71 Old Tower Hill Road. And there are 52 total spaces on the lot. So on our calculations, there were an extra 32 spaces that could potentially be available. So that provided a very high level of comfort for us here with exceeding our expectations on parking.
Again, I'm just for clarity, I'm counting 30 spaces in essence dedicated for the commercial retail restaurant, and your 22 associated with the new retail / office. So again, I don't mind, zoning allows for shared parking scenarios. It's just something we'll probably have Jay take a closer look at along with Jamie Gorman.
Understood. I guess our point was they may have 30 physical, we know they have 32 spaces that are provided for the front part there, where their regulatory requirement under the ordinance is 22. So they've got an extra 10.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, any other questions?
Members, I know we have representative from Union Fire District, Chris. You have been quiet and patient. I don't know if you have any points to make with regards to this development.
I don't. It looks like we have adequate fire department access, whether we come straight in where the dumpster is or get a smaller truck in. I don't believe we're going to get the ladder truck in that parking lot, but I don't know for sure because there's nothing on the plans that discern the turning radius of that entrance to that parking lot. But other than that, I really don't have any concerns.
Thank you, Chris. And Mary, we haven't heard from you. I don't know. I don't want to not recognize you or see if you have any insight into this.
I have nothing to add other than what I've heard from Jay and yourself and everyone else present.
Thank you, Mary. Mr. Landry, I don't know if you have anything to add. I know you mentioned you have an owner rep with you today. If there was any anything he can add to the operation of the business, the numbers associated with the business. I would leave that up to.
Yeah. And is there anything further you'd like to add?
No, just that we are a group that has experience in the industry where we have a cultivation grow facility in Warwick. In addition to that, we have experience in the retail side where we have a retail facility in only Maryland. So we're a group with experience and we know how to, operate this business. And, we're an open book. And if there's any questions or concerns or anything that you guys have or want to see some of our operations, we're always welcoming anybody to come in and take a tour. And yeah, if there's any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer. And just one last thing regarding the total, traffic and total amount of people coming in. As John mentioned, there are only 3 locations currently in Rhode Island and about 16,000 patients. That number is going to 9. There is currently 1 in Middletown, and then there's going to be an additional one, another part of South County, more of the lower half with Newport and Portsmouth and Middletown and that whole area. So this location would not be the sole area of South County. There is one already in Middletown, and there's going to be another one for Zone 6 from the state. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Thank you, Ben.
Can't hear you, Rich.
Rich, do you have anything to add? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Because
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can.
Yeah.
All right, this is a newer computer, but the microphone keeps cutting out. I've already talked to IT about it, but every once in a while it cuts out. I don't even know it's out until I go to speak. But are there other facilities that are planned further south towards Westerly, or is this one planning to cover sort of the whole southern end of the state?
So I can't tell you, there's a whole application process that's happening, and our applications are due on the 14th, and it's going to be a lottery system for all compliant groups. But this location is in Zone 5, which includes South Kingston, Westerly, and Exeter, and there's 3 other towns that just don't allow it at all. So there's thought that there's going to be one location in one of these 3 cities, and then there's Zone 6. That is the entire lower half of the state from Newport up, kind of thing. Newport, Portsmouth, Middletown, all of those little.
But Narragansett, Exeter down to Westerly is the lower half of the state. What you're talking about is another additional facility on the eastern part of the state and on Aquidneck Island. That's a little different. So,
right.
From Narragansett, even Exeter is even further north than I would have thought, but from Exeter down to Westerly is the entire southern half of the state.
Right. So that, and then, obviously there's the Greenleaf in Middletown, which is what you're referring to as well. But yes.
I just worry that people from Charlestown or Richmond or Hopkinton or all these other small towns aren't going to go to Middletown. What they're going to do is they're going to come here. I mean, this would be the easiest access. Unless you're closer to 95, you can go up to Warwick, maybe a little bit easier, but they're going to come here. Anybody off of Route 1, the whole Route 1 corridor is going to come here. And that's what I worry about with the numbers. I just think that 20 in the 40s, 20 in, 20 out or whatever it was, it just seems a little low to me. That's all.
Understood.
Again, Ben, our goal as a TRC and advising permitting agencies is to make sure that you're in a position of success.
And I
that
appreciate
the project
your guys' insight
is approved that it works.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bill, I don't know if you have any wrap-up comments before you proceed. I think I'll remember John Schock in prior conversations that TRC is not in the process of potentially moving projects forward with a number of outstanding items. I think if I had to take a poll right now, that it would be to table this to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the TRC. There are a few outstanding items with regards to, parking lot layout, landscaping, lighting. A couple things that the members have asked John Shevlin to look at a little closer that would potentially make the commission weary of making a formal recommendation on this application at this time. So again, Bill, Mr. Landry, I'll allow you to, do some closing comments and your thoughts on how you'd like TRC to act on your application.
Well, obviously, we'd like the TRC to recommend our application to the planning board with conditions that certain things be addressed, but I leave that to the discretion of the committee. I mean, these are things that I think could be identified in a recommendation of the planning board as items that needed more robust treatment. But apart from that, I'm not sure I've got anything to say that wouldn't be redundant of what we've already presented. I do appreciate the suggestions that have been raised. I think they're things that could be addressed, without great difficulty. I know the traffic report that Mr. Shevlin provided did have information or used information, referred to it from Massachusetts facilities. I mean, there was a very conscious effort to try to be aware that the one space per 350 square feet for retail is probably not the significant, the real control. And that's why we went to the higher numbers, above the higher numbers that were suggested for this type of use in the ITE traffic manuals. And the experience of our client contributed to that with their other facilities. So we think we're very close, if not over the traffic. And then fortunately, we've got room to accommodate additional cars on this site. So I'm certain that Mr. Shevlin will take a closer look at the capacity analysis, the level of service. We'll follow up and make a robust traffic analysis more robust. Same thing with the landscape plan. There are some, additions to make, some gaps to fill, some confirmations to make that everything is there. But I think those are all things that could be quantified and recommended that those things be cleared up as part of a favorable advisory that identifies issues that need further treatment. But I certainly leave that up to the committee's discretion as to how to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. So with regards to this application, kind of two options would be to entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the planning board, or to make a motion to table it, seeking additional information with regards to some of the items Mr. Landry just summarized with regards to landscaping, traffic, parking circulation. We had some security lighting and solidifying a little more code compliance issues with regards to the application. John, Rich, Peter, Mary, any thoughts?
I guess I'll just say, I always struggle moving, I'm not shy to say so, moving projects on when there's still some open items.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they can have everything done before our next meeting, but it would be just a waste of time if it wasn't. The planning board's just gonna, push it off too. So, I kind of agree with John. I think if you guys had another go around and get caught up and then, present again, we might have be able to get it to the planning board and just not waste a lot of time there.
John, Peter, Rich, would any of you like to make a motion? Not intending to exclude Mary or Jamie Gorman either. Jamie, did you have anything to add at this point?
The only thing I would mention, I don't know if it's a discrepancy or parking spaces 15 and 16. If the existing conditions, the survey doesn't show dumpster containers, but the photographs seem to indicate that. I don't know if that could be clarified. And if they are there, what they're associated with, what business, and if it would be satisfactory to have the one that's on the proposed in between the rear of D'Angelo's and 91 Pershing. So I don't see it on this plan, the landscape, just the survey, I believe.
Okay, I am certain that the proposed conditions have the trash dumpster moved to the area near D'Angelo's. I recall seeing a dumpster in the corner that you're describing, and I'm not sure why it's not showing on the existing conditions plan. So we can put it there, but I don't think that's where we want to keep it.
Again, Mr. Landry, I think your intent would be to have that dumpster in the north corner,
Correct.
just north of the loading dock area for
Correct.
Angelo's.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, I would entertain a motion. It seems to be some consensus to table this to your next regularly scheduled meeting.
So I'll make a motion to table this agenda item to the next meeting, subject to the additional information and clarification on the outstanding items that Jamie previously listed.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by John, seconded by Peter. Is there any discussion on the motion to table to the next regularly scheduled meeting? Hearing no discussion, I will ask for a roll, just to be clear. We have John Schock,
Aye.
Rich B,
Aye.
Jamie Gorman,
Aye.
Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Mary Talbot, Rubino,
Aye.
Rabbit, aye. So we have a all in favor. Jay, just for clarity, our next regularly scheduled meeting is January
13th.
13th.
Yep. And Mr. Landry and everybody else, I think on the landscape plan, P12 shows the dumpsters in the corner of the parking lot. If that's where you recall seeing them.
Right, that's from the, sorry, that is from the pictures that they took. That's what's existing there from a vacant property right now. That's not proposed. That's what's currently there.
Understood. I was just trying to, I think I saw them somewhere too, and Mr. Landry alluded that he saw them in a different location that was on the plan as well. Just wanted to
No,
point that out.
I totally understand that. That's my fault, and I should have them taken out from that photo on the next revision.
Mr. Landry, I also want to mention too, the planning department staff, as I'm sure, as well as Rich and John, are available if your team has any questions specific to the discussion today on expanding the conversation with regards to traffic or parking lot configuration, handicap spaces, so that you can get some feedback on the level that may be necessary for you to make certain revisions to the plans and move forward with your project.
Thank you, Mr. Rabbit. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so feel free to reach out to us, Phil, and we'll give you feedback.
Thanks. Jay, could you give me that date again, the next TRC?
It's Wednesday, January 13th.
Okay, thank you.
And Bill, they're typically in the AM.
Yes. Thank you.
And the deadline for that would be January 1st. So I would encourage you to get anything in by the 30th. Because we are closed on January 1st, and I believe we have a half day on the 31st.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
Okay.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Don't move.
No one wants a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjournment? Thumbs up will work. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
That's all right.